I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to report publicly on the progress of the Second Century project. And I'd also like to formally thank you for entrusting me with the duties of the owner's representative. I don't think I've done that yet. It's a task that I take very seriously with regard to the safeguard of the interest of all the stakeholders involved in this project. This is a monumental undertaking for K-12 education, not only for the Kingston City School District and the supporting community, but also at the state educational level, because there's very few projects of this magnitude and vision that is being performed in New York State right now. So we're on the forefront of capital improvements. We are continuing the work on site. The foundation on the east wing that's what you're seeing here in the field house. The foundation on the east wing is completed. They're backfilling, and on Friday, the crane is coming with 2 loads of steel, and steel will start to go up on Monday morning. The foundation work at the field house is just about complete. We're looking for a completion date with plumbing in the underslab in about 2 weeks, and steel will be going up in about 3 weeks. On the other side, the west wing, we're down to grade. It doesn't look so pretty right there, but that's where the foundation is going. We've hit some more rock, so the gentle noise of the pounding continues. But it's, from what I understand and from my observations on site, it's a lot less noisy than it was in the alleyway bouncing off the buildings. So, except for Mike's office, he has already complained about it. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the actual construction of the project. I'd rather talk about, I believe this report, I'm going to leave that for KSQ and for BBL. This is more about the project inside the project, the safety of the students and staff, site logistics, and the good work that's being done by the Kingston staff, who are dedicated to the continuation of the educational project while they're supporting this project. And every day I see Kurt and Andy about some issue. We're moving kids around site, electrical issues, transportation issues, whatever it is. We're in all the time, and they just really enjoy wearing hard hats. Mr. Parker has come right in and taken over his department, and we're discussing, because we're on the west wing now and there's fencing up, we're actually discussing in those drawings how to get the kids out of the 700 wing, and we've come up with a plan to go across the MJM gym and go out the double doors at the end of the hallway. And he was instrumental in getting that taken care of. Our maintenance and custodial crew has been a great help. That's Joe Kennedy and Todd Rickson, and all the door hardware and everything else. This is at the field house, was supplied by the contractors. These guys go back and put it to our keying system. So now it's secure to our keying system, and our keying system works. This is the cleaning crew for up at the high school. The second guy from the left is John Boyle. He's our head custodian. They're moving furniture and equipment into the locker rooms at this point. Over last summer, they moved everything out of the field house, and we are currently moving everything back into the field house. So it's, again, quite an undertaking. And that's Kenny Zeiler, who is putting the final touches on just before we opened up for the first day of business. This is 400 and some odd chairs set up at the field house during the project for Regents Week. All the contract, the field house is under construction. And keeping in mind that we're keeping the educational process moving, we had regents there with contractors working right on the other side of a block wall. And we had no complaints from the students. I talked to proctors daily. I talked to Kurt daily. And there was no complaints about the noise. Kids took their test, and we continued with the construction progress. That's Mike DeAngelis, our electrician, with a guy from Central Hudson, and we're checking the power on the west side for MJM. We have to do a temporary service there, and we're trying to figure out how to make that transformer work and save a few dollars by just getting a meter and some wires to it. We're not only are we using our resources to support the project, we also are using the project as an educational tool. This group of kids is from the P-Tech group from BOCES, that's in Carnegie, it's housed in Carnegie. We spent about 2 hours, we went into the job trailers, architects explained their part of the job, BBL explained their part of the job, engineers, and then we went outside. I did a little talk, and we went outside, and they're all staring at the foundation. I wish I had this from the other side, because the pump truck, I don't know if anybody's seen that, they dump concrete into the pump truck, they pump it up 100 feet, and then they put it into the forms. And they were absolutely amazed about that happening. And it was a good program. Kurt and Dan Ursick are now working on shadowing programs so that our KHS kids can also join in this educational piece of this. And lastly, but not least, the other part of what we do every day is try to keep the board and administration informed of of what's going on there with all the questions and concerns. So last meeting, somebody asked me what a grade beam is, and the highlighted area is a grade beam. It's a structural member that's right under the first floor when conditions underneath will not support the weight of the building. And so I'm answering your questions from last week on that. My other charge for this report is to bring change orders to this board for approval. All change orders have to be approved by the board prior to submission, final cost submissions to SED. So the team has a mission statement. The mission of the entire project team is to design and build, by means of fiscally responsible methods and procedures, a functional, code-compliant educational building that meets or exceeds the current and future needs of students, the district, and the supporting community. And that entire team is BBL, KSQ, me, building administration, district administration, and the board. We all have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers, and we are very cognizant of that. So with that, I'm going to ask in the consent agenda, it's already in your package, for some approval on some change orders. And I just wanted to go over a few little things, the process of how we get to what we've given you for approval. So an allowance, in construction terms, is money that's actually embedded in the contract when you approve it. So the allowance money has already been approved by the board by resolution when we accepted the contractor's bids. Contingency funds are designated for undetermined or yet to be determined issues that can change the scope of work during the actual construction. So in the big picture, it was approved as a placeholder in the original project budget. So we approved by referendum and by board resolution, we approved $137 million for this project. Out of that, there's $10 million of contingency money that we use for unseen conditions. And a change order is the actual written document that directing the contractor to proceed with changes that will have an effect on scope or cost of the project. Change orders are funded first by allowance, which we already approved, and then secondly by contingency. The causes for change orders are unforeseen conditions. We knew we had rock, we didn't know how much we had, and that was an unforeseen condition. We open up a wall, we find something, we don't know what's in there. Errors and omissions it's a tough one, because a lot of times we do all the investigative work that we can, and there may be an error. Right now on the west side, the sewer pipe is supposed to go straight out and down the road. It goes right under the corner of the foundation. So by drawings and information that we had from the original Salzman, we did the right design. But it was an error because the actual field condition was different than what our data showed when we were designing. And out of all of them, I would say that I can say confidently, we are tweaking the plans all the time for the new projects, and we feel that there is no major error or omissions coming forward. There will be some, but there's no major ones. And then owner request. So if we decide that we're going to put carpet down instead of tile, and we decide to do that, somehow we're going to pay for that, and there will be a change order for that. Throughout the whole process, there's fiscal safeguards. The approved budget by law cannot be increased without a public vote. Some municipalities can do that. If you have a voting body like the County of Ulster, they can increase the project by voting on it themselves and spending their own funds. We can't. We cannot exceed the 137. contractual language. It defines the scope of the work, the unit pricing, and change procedures. So the scope of the work goes down to every little fitting, every little screw, whatever's coming on that project has been put forth in the spec book. Unit pricing is something like rock. We knew we were coming into rock. We decided that it was going to cost $200 a square yard, and that's what they're going to get paid. If it takes them a month to take it out, or it takes them a day, they're going to get paid $200 to remove that rock. So, and then the change procedure, there's a whole section on how changes are identified, who approves them, and how the process goes along. That, and the third piece of that is this board approved in Kingston City Schools an approval procedure that allows myself and administration to approve to a certain level, and the board has to approve over that level. All of these changes are reviewed by the architects, consultants, everybody reviews them, make sure that we're doing it in the right manner, in a fiscally responsible way, and then we actually sign the change order, site supervision by construction managers and myself. We watch what they're doing, we count their hours, we cross-reference it with supporting documentation. Typical change order, this is 30 pages for an installation of the 2 doors. Every item that went there and every hour is documented here, right down to screws. $8.60 for screws to hold that door together. And that's all put into the change order. And then if we do not agree with what they said they spent, then we negotiate the final cost. So with all that said, we have every board meeting in the board package, you get this, and it's a very brief description of the change order and the costs. About 2 weeks ago, we discussed this, and this came through the steering committee, and it was a request for approval, and that's what we're asking for in the consent agenda today. This was the first shot at it, and then in the steering committee in between, we decided that because allowance money was already approved by the board when they approved the bids from the contractors, the one that you have tonight that we're asking for approval only reflects money from contingency. And so when we go through the entire process and all the safeguards, this is what we're asking for approval. And there's only 2 that need approval by the board, and it's on the front page, and that is the rock removal and bracing of the wall. Although the work has already started, and actually the work of the bracing is completed, and we did not get prior board approval, it was a critical path item, and we talked about it quite a bit here. BBL continued to talk about it, and we needed a way to present it to the board. And so that's what's here. Moving forward, after this, every 2 weeks, if there's something that's going to be over $50,000, you will know about it before we proceed with the work. This is more or less the catch-up model, you know, to bring us up to speed. The rest of the change orders that are listed are broken down by contract, the field house, the early steel, and there'll be the fit-up, there'll be the main building, and this package will grow. And then at the end, there's the actual reconciliation of the money. For the first phase of the project, we have $3.8 million in contingency. Currently, we have spent about $74,000. And again, that will grow tonight if you approve the rock and the wall components of this document. And I know I spent a little bit of time, but I thought it was important of how we arrived here. We don't just come and say, we want this or we need this. We carefully think about how we're going to do it and do it in the most fiscally responsible way. And so, with all that said, we can reserve questions for the consent agenda, or you can ask me questions now, or whatever the board's pleasure.
Can we ask questions now?
Sure.
So thank you for this presentation. That was great. And it was great to walk through all the safeguards and also walk through some of the language, because I think not everybody's familiar with that, and that
Right.
was great, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
So are you saying that we've spent this money already?
What we have spent is the $74,000. The extra on the front page, the roughly $280 $78,000 is what we anticipate the final cost for the rock will cost.
Okay.
So we've removed, at the field house, we removed about 1,200 cubic yards of rock. In the alleyway, we did trench rock, which has a different value, and now on the west wing, we're removing more rock. So in the original contingency budget put together that was submitted to the state by BBL, we had $300,000 for rock removal. And at this point, we think that we're going to be around the $280,000 mark, or a little bit below it. And so
But this is in addition to that.
this is in the contingency money from the original budget, but not in the contract, not in the contracts that have already been let. It's a condition that we anticipated, but we anticipated with a value of $300,000. And now, as we're in the process, we feel that we're going to do it for about $280,000.
Okay, so is this a max? If we approve this, this is a maximum?
Right. If we, and it's a very educated guess, if we approach coming to this, we would have to come back and ask for some more money for rock removal. We would have another change order.
Okay.
I don't anticipate that at this point.
Any other questions? Mrs. Collins?
First of all, just want to agree with Dr. Jacobowitz. Thank you. Great presentation, very thorough, very specific, and it's great to have at this juncture. And I had noticed you mentioned something, because I had heard something too about, but I thought it was an issue, what I was hearing was there was an issue with the foundation at Salzman, but you said it was a pipe that needed to be relocated?
Well, there's been several. There was actually early on, and again, this is, you could call it an error or an omission, but it was really an unforeseen condition. On the data that we had from the original blueprints from Salzman, there was a foundation wall that went down roughly 20 feet. So we were going to build next to that. So the original drawings showed footings and another structure to support our building. When we got there, we opened, we started digging, and there was no wall there. It was just piers. So we had to come up with another way to support that corner of the building. So the error was the original design, and we had to come up with a new design. This pipe that's under the, and so what we did, we put micropiles in, a grade beam, and it was all designed by the structural engineer, and that's all been done. The work's already been done.
Okay, so it has been-
And that change order is also in the approval package for tonight. The sewer line was coming out of the other side. It was coming out of the kitchen on Salzman, and it clearly showed on the prints, on all the data that we had, all the old prints, all the site drawings, that it went straight out toward MJM and down the hill, and it actually goes off on about a 40-degree angle and went right through where we need to put a foundation. So now we have to move that.
Thanks for the clarification.
Mistakes happen in a project like this, there will be many, I'm sure.
Right.
Are we responsible for all errors?
No. For example, the steel that's going up has bolts that hold it to the concrete. Every so often there's a pier, and there's 4 bolts that come out that hold that steel. As you're pouring concrete, it's obviously not an exacting science, so those bolts move. Out of I believe there's 32 bolt patterns on the east wing. There were 4 that were off more than the tolerance. There's like a 3/8 tolerance. So the Jersen has to pay for the repair of that for the steel worker. We went back to the consultants. They said, this is the fix, and it was cutting the bottom plate off the column and moving it over about 5/8 of an inch. We're not talking a lot. It was off by this much. So they have to move it over 5/8 of an inch. That was not an error on our part. That was an error on Jersen's part. So Jersen will be responsible to the steel worker for that cost.
Okay, thank you.
When you're talking about the pylons and the foundation with Salzman, the difficulty you encountered, that was from the original Salzman building, the 79 edition?
That is correct.
That's not anything that's in this
Right.
project?
So
Right.
at the end of all projects, you get a couple boxes full of books and all these blueprints, and currently it comes on a disk or a thumb drive, but in the day. So we had all of those drawings. And so all the structural engineers, all the consultants, the architects went off what was on those drawings. And on those drawings, it showed a wall all the way down 20 feet. And when we started to dig, it wasn't built that way. So the as-built, at the end of the day, we're supposed to receive a complete set of as-built. And this goes back to that spec book and another safeguard. In our specs, as-built happen as construction happens. So it's reviewed monthly. Prints are generated constantly showing what we did and how we did it. So we don't wait till the end and somebody goes, oh, yeah, maybe I put a brick wall there, maybe I didn't, I can't remember, and they mark it off. And that's how it was done in some projects in the past. So when Salzman, the as-built, they were marked as-built, but they weren't accurate to what was actually there on that foundation wall.
Thank you, Mr. Clapper, for an excellent presentation. One thing comes to my mind now is about the safety. Since we started the construction, thank God, nothing happened, but my main concern is about emergency situation like fire. Do you have changed evacuation procedures from the building?
Yes, every time that we put up a fence or a barrier, and again, a good example of that is when we started on the west side, there's a double door at the end of the hallway by the cafeteria that goes down a half a set of stairs and it goes out. Well, that's now in a construction zone. And so we had to close that door off. We consulted with the architect to make sure that everything met fire code. We had Kingston Fire Department come over and walk with us of our evacuation plan. We involved Mr. Parker and the police officers on site of how we were going to get the kids out. And that one picture where we are with Mr. Parker, that was part of that. So we decided that all the people got together, decided that we could get out through the breezeway on MJM, both the upper level of Salzman and the library level and the cafeteria level. But people coming from MJM, it would be too crowded in that opening. So that's why we ended up bringing them out the other end of MJM through the gym.
Okay, good, thanks.
Mr. Olson, you have
I just wanted to point out that part of Mr. Clapper's role to make sure that the as-built for the Second Century project are better than the as-built for the Salzman 1980 project. I think I would also like you to comment, if you would, on the supporting the change order for the supporting the wall because of the complications in figuring out actually how much it would cost.
Right. So again, back in 1950, whatever, when the field house was built, there was a set of drawings and a structural diagram. The wall did not meet that. And so when we opened up the wall and started taking the building away, we realized that the addition that wasn't supposed to be part of the support for that wall was actually supporting the wall. So we brought the structural engineers in, and they looked at it, and they said, well, to support it, we have to bring all this steel in on the inside. At that point, if we had stopped, we wouldn't even been able to deliver the 2 locker rooms, because it was a critical piece that needed to be done immediately. Even the pieces of the building that we tore down weakened the wall. So our structural consultant and the structural consultant of the contractor got together, and they came up with a plan to brace that wall. In your document right now, it shows, I think, a change order for around $57,000. And again, we're requesting approval for that amount, but at the end of the day, I believe that's going to be cheaper. Because as we're reviewing the documents with the architects and the engineers, the contractor owed us some of that bracing just to support the wall during construction. So we're negotiating currently with them. Their price to us was the 57. Now we're negotiating that down. So that one possibly will go under 50, but my gut tells me it's going to be right at 50, and that's why we're asking for a pre-approval for that.
Mr. Shaughnessy.
Do these major change orders, especially that involve the structural integrity of the building, do they have to be sent to the State Education Department?
No, not during construction. At the end of the day, the treasurer, Beth, will fill out a final cost report. And so the process is that we do these change orders. They're approved by the architect. They're signed off and stamped by the engineers. And it's all done in a format so that at the end of the day, every penny is accounted for. And so that's why That's why the board has to approve every one, even the ones under 50,000, even if it's a credit. If I get a credit back, we got credit, there's a change order in here for a credit for they had electric hand blowers, and we went with paper towels, and there's a credit for about $5,000. That all has to be in the final cost report for submission to SED, and then it's reconciled at SED.
Any other questions for Mr. Clapham? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clapper.
Thank you.